Hey everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here. How are you today? Little technical difficulty. We got the guy blowing the leaves in the background. So if you hear the soliloquy, it's what's going on over here. Hope everybody had a great weekend, got invigorated over this weekend, had a lot of great webinars, did a webinar for 4.5 hours on the gut-to-brain axis for Nutridyne, did a 1.5 hour follow-up with Functional Medicine University on health and immunity. Really went great. We reached like 700 docs, practitioners, doctors, and everybody. Some consumers also. That's going to reach down. I really appreciate everybody who was able to support it. I appreciate everybody who was able to ask questions. So once again, we're going to have a great live today, little podcast. We've got a bunch of different things to cover of great interest to you. We're going to actually give you tips. We're going to tell you foods. We're going to tell you how to do a whole bunch of different things. You know, we've been home for a month. It's been different, to say the least. I've got a lot of patients calling, telehealth. So a lot of them are listening. I got a lot of great practitioners who will follow me, really calling out. So, you know, feel free to reach out. Feel free to ask a question. No laptop here, going straight with you right now. It's just you and I. And let's get into some ideas about lifestyle. We've kind of brushed upon that before, about how lifestyles roll and what lifestyle plays in reference to this health pandemic and COVID-19. So when you think about these comorbidities, I was just on the phone with a couple of my friends, Dr. Mike Powell from Creator Chiropractic, as you all know, that he does a great job supporting us, and Dr. Dane Donahue from 8 Weeks to Wellness. And we were looking at these comorbidities, and it hit us. So obesity is a major comorbidity, you know, where you're too heavy. The obesity as a comorbidity can cause diabetes. Obesity as a comorbidity can cause hypertension. Obesity as a comorbidity can lead you down a path of CVD, cardiovascular disease. So it's a lifestyle thing that we need to talk about to decrease the comorbidities, because where we're really getting people with a higher incidence of infection and bad infections is because of these comorbidities. So let's talk about some numbers. I mean, when I gathered these numbers, I shook my head. So underlying chronic disease, let's look at this. 75% of Americans are overweight. 3 out of 4 people in America now are overweight. 42% of Americans are obese. Almost 5 out of 10. And we all know those numbers are going up. The trajectory is up. So 75% are overweight, 42 are obese. 6 out of 10 Americans have one chronic disease. 60% of us have the comorbidity that may enable us not only to acquire, unfortunately, easily more exposed to getting it, that is COVID-19, but also having a rougher time with it. 4 out of 10 Americans have more than one comorbidity. So 4 out of 10 Americans can have 2, 3, 4 comorbidities. And as we age, we're seeing the increase in comorbidities. Those numbers are fascinating for obesity, in that from 18 to 64, obesity is the #1 comorbidity. Over 65, it's hypertension. So people in my age bracket, people in your age bracket, in a very large populous age bracket, are too heavy. They have the opportunity now, because a lot of things have changed, to deal with that. In addition, obesity increases the risk of death in COVID-19 by 3 times. So again, I'm shaking my head, because it was the obvious on how to help people, and the obvious what to do if we're thinking about a second wave, as the social distancing looks to have helped a certain amount. So all these things, all these comorbidities have one thing in common. They lead to an increase in inflammation. When you're obese, when you have too much weight, when you're 20 over, you are too inflamed. Fat cells, and we all have them, the bigger they are, the rounder we look, for lack of a better term, a little more corpulent once again. Fat cells are depositories for toxins. Toxins, the storage of toxins, is inflammatory to the overall health of people. They lead to increased inflammation. And as we all know, inflammation is not a positive thing. It is very detrimental to our overall health. Leads us on a path of having increased inflammation, leads us to getting a better chance, if you will, of going into when we get attacked by this pathogen and having that cytokine storm, which is so deleterious to overall health.
Policy is a tremendous opportunity to help ourselves.
Yeah, and it's a great takeaway. Mike said it's a tremendous opportunity to help ourselves. Mike was telling me about his own plight. So Mike, do me a favor. I'd really love you to put it in the comment section so everybody can see what you told me yesterday. And after you see it, I'll read it out, because what you told me on yourself, and we as practitioners, and we have a lot of practitioners who check in and watch us on our podcast on Facebook Live, we have to take care of ourselves. Part in taking care of ourselves is not just masking and gloving and doing all these things, but taking care of our health so we can help others. That's a critical element. I can't help you if I'm not healthy myself. I can't tell you what to do. I can't set that example if I'm not doing it myself. My dad said something funny once. He said, do as I say and not as I do. And we looked at each other and we had that moment and we're like, and he's like, that's not really good dad advice. And I'm like, it's the first time he ever said anything that wasn't good. Let's try it again. And it really resonated with me. And I actually think to this day he said that to really let that reverberate in my head, that if you want to lead and if you want people to listen to your voice, you have to lead by example. It was very funny last night, and not trying to go off on a tangent, I was watching, I'm a big sports fan, basketball, always thought Michael Jordan was great. They made a comment that Michael Jordan did his job as well as maybe anybody ever in the world. And Michael Jordan said, I'm going to lead by example. If you're not going to do it, I'll do it. So it's the same thing for us. So we all have to get into shape, whether we're mom and dad for our kids, because obesity is rising in those teenage years, or it's doctors or anybody. Right now, our best way, and maybe where America needs to go for the future, as this is maybe a big calling card, is to get in better physical condition. So let's look at some of the things. Belly fat poses an issue right over there. Well, if I could just lose this, that's the worst kind of fat. So you've got two kinds of fat. We've talked about it before. You have your superficial fat. That's on the outside, where you can pinch an inch, if you will. And in that pinch an inch, you usually can get rid of that by doing the exercise. Number two, you have that visceral fat. We've talked about that before. Visceral fat infiltrates all the organs, really very ruinous to overall health. Got to be careful with that. So we want to avoid our belly fat as much as we can. We don't necessarily have to have the Brad Pitt six-pack in Fight Club. That may not be necessary. We want to be healthy. It's not just about all about the aesthetics. It's all about health. Another interesting factoid. Only 12% of Americans are metabolically functionally appropriate. So conversely, 88% of Americans are metabolically challenged. So when you look at that, it's 1 in 8 people are truly optimizing their overall health. So 12% is only metabolically healthy. We've got to change those numbers. So how are we going to change those numbers? Got a whole bunch of suggestions over here. In that, before we change the numbers, I got a question.
Not a question, but my policy. I wrote an article a few years back about the fact that many of the most deadly metabolic diseases in our time are not actually diseases. They're consequences to behavior and was not well received.
It's funny. Mike said he wrote an article about most deadly metabolic diseases, and they were not well received. I think, Mike, if you reprint that, I think it's like the Bohemian Rhapsody. They said it was a horrible song when it first came out. They re-released it after Freddie Mercury passed. It was number one. It became number one after a while in 75. And I can see people, I saw the movie. It was one of the only times I went to the movie theater. I saw 15-year-olds singing it. So the suggestion there, the takeaway there is re-release it. Timing's everything. Some of the things that I would suggest, here's a few easy lifestyle things. Let's start with easy food suggestions. No sugar, no starch. They are processed the same by the body. No sugar, no starch. My notes here say, hey, you eat sugar and starch, they decrease your immune function. And it's all about immune function now. 300 calories of sugar decreases your immune function for 2 hours by 50%. And believe it or not, it can, if you are infected, it worsens your infection. Pretty much everything that's bad in your body loves sugar. Sugar feeds a lot of things that are unhappy. So I'm not saying no carbohydrates. I'm saying low sugar carbohydrates, no processed food. Those are critical elements because if you consume those, once again, and I want to reiterate this, you're going to have a decrease in immune function and you're going to have a decrease in getting rid of infections. Also, some people may not like this, limit and stop alcohol. A lot of articles recently have come out that alcohol actually suppresses immune system, and more so than that, alcohol suppresses the ingestion and the absorption of key nutrients. So no sugar, no stall, no alcohol. Alcohol is a sugar alcohol. Believe it or not, for every gram of carbohydrates you consume, it's 4 calories. For every gram of sugar alcohol you consume, it's 7 calories. So when you gauge that versus sugar and starch, you realize how damaging alcohol can be. We want to eat flavonoid foods, and I'm going to actually give you a list of the flavonoid foods. They're antiviral properties, really strong, robust antiviral properties. Also, I'm going to give you a list of some herbs and spices. They're going to be antiviral and immune boosting. Believe it or not, good quality protein. People like plant-based. I love plant-based. I love everything plant-based and adding some good quality protein. Kind of went through them before, the grass-fed beefs and the smashed wild fish, eggs if you're not allergic, and feed your microbiome. Without question, 80% of your immune cells are in your gut. You hear that all the time. You should tell your patients, yourself that every day. What have you done for your guts lately? Do you have the guts to be healthy? So take care of your microbiome. The first step in your immune system is barriers. So your skin, your mucosal lining, like your mucosal lining on your lung, the mucosal lining, epithelial lining in your gut. So that's your first barrier. When that's broken, those barriers are broken, guess what happens? That's when you actually stimulate your innate immune system.
Can you post the flavonoid foods?
I will be happy to post the flavonoid foods. You got to give me a little time to post them, but I will definitely post them. Who asked for that? Mike, I'll be happy to. Making me work hard. I think I'm going to take a little picture on the phone and have you post them. Just kidding. So let's look at the flavonoids. What flavonoids are antiviral properties? Strong antiviral properties. Spinach, cabbage, dill. Quercetin. Quercetin, you can get it in a supplement, but you have a lot of options in food to get quercetin. That's dill, onion, oregano, chili pepper, apples, leafy green vegetables, and broccoli. Some fruits that are actually really strong in flavonoids or anti-flavonoids: oranges, grapefruits, tangerines, and lemon. First thing in the morning, wake up, get some water, get some lemon in there, go for it. Drink that water down first, great choice. Go right for your black organic coffee. If you're in an intermittent fast, it's got to stay black. If you know that's when you're going to start to eat and you're going to mix it with a good quality breakfast like I had this morning, my wife's a great cook, then you can go for that coffee. I know he's watching, Dave D'Angelo, Purity Coffee, you got it. Also, some other flavonoids: olives and extra virgin olive oil. Why extra virgin versus regular olive oil? Well, extra virgin olive oil is cold pressed, and it's actually, by cold pressing, the process enables you not to damage the flavonoid. Heat damages the flavonoid. So you really don't want to cook on a high flame with olive oil. If it's a very, very low flame, olive oil is a good choice. If you want to go higher, take the olive oil out, put it on the salad, put it on the food, cook with more of an avocado oil. Not as much coconut oil. I'm positive for coconut oil, but a large consumption of coconut oil, believe it or not, can be a little detrimental to your gut health. So coconuts, yes, but don't eat the whole tree full of coconuts. Catechins, green tea. 4 to 5 cups of green tea. Study just came out. What a great study on green tea. They call it docking. So we have receptor sites in our body, and we all have talked about the ACE2 receptor site. There's other receptor sites on the cell. EGCG, in a study, quercetin was in it. Quercetin was positive. There were things that we mentioned that were positive versus 2 very famous drugs. I can put the article up if you'd like. EGCG docked and blocked things from going into the cell better than the drugs. So much so, the conclusion, the takeaway by the medical field was EGCG should be considered an alternative to drugs and maybe studied as a drug. That's how potent it is. Green tea all the way. Lauric acid, which you can get from breast milk, okay? And of course, unrefined virgin coconut oil. Again, good to take, not in large amounts. Antiviral and immune boosting herbs and spices. Let's go through the list. Ginger. We've always heard of ginger. I mean, it's funny. When I was a kid, my mom said drink ginger ale to decrease, some stomach upset. The ginger was good. The sugar, obviously, we didn't know. Garlic. Garlic is antibacterial, antifungal, antiparasitic. It's your own antibiotic. Garlic is a great choice in the form of allicin. Chop it up. Turmeric. Active ingredient curcumin. My goodness, what a great herb. Everybody knows it. It's that reddish orange herb that everybody sees. It decreases the NF-kappa B pathway. That NF-kappa B pathway is what actually leads you down a path to get that NLRP3 inflammasome. So by decreasing that, you can decrease the cytokine storm, and also increases the NRF2 pathway, which is your big antioxidant pathway. Chili pepper. Chili pepper. Let me tell you something interesting on chili pepper. You know, my wife loves chili where she's from. They do it. I don't like it that hot. She's kind of, chili flakes kind of converted me a little bit. Really good. Raises your temperature. Real good for health. Chili pepper, believe it or not, stimulates something called bacteriophages. Bacteriophages are the antithesis to antibiotics. Antibiotics came about in the 30s and 40s, and the doctors put aside the bacteriophage. Chili pepper makes these bacteriophages. So if I can compare and contrast antibiotic from bacteriophages, the antibiotic, we call it a carpet bomber. It kills all bacteria, and that's part of the problem. It just comes in and wipes everything out. The bacteriophage is interesting in that it's a sniper. It goes for a single bacteria. You may not say that's important, but sometimes viruses go on bacteria. So therefore, you have the opportunity to ameliorate them. I got you. So chili pepper is great because that it stimulates this beautiful thing called bacteriophages. It allows for a positive environment, bacteriophages in your gut, and anything that helps your gut helps your immune system.
Kendra wants to know about coconut oil. I'm a massage therapist and use coconut oil. Being that it's absorbed through the skin, is that too much, being honest, on the whole body?
Well, I don't know that it's too much. Oh, the question was, Kendra is a massage therapist. She uses coconut oil. I think it's a good choice oil. It is absorbed. It's not the same thing going through the epidermis as it is in your mouth. So if you're doing that, just let them know. I think it would be fine, would be my impression. I'm talking about some people just drink coconut oil like they would drink water, and that's what we're trying to dissuade. Oregano, fabulous. Oregano oil is great. It's an immune booster. Not only that, it's great for getting rid of bad bacteria in your gut, and it also helps in that it's antiviral. So protein, interestingly enough, protein is a great choice. You need your proteins. Proteins are critical for enzymatic reactions. There's a lot of studies that go with low protein and the high plant-based, and they have some interesting literature. I don't think you have to go high protein. I think higher than 10% overall would do you well, because protein builds muscle mass. And you can have your protein in multiple sources, but you want good quality protein. Remember, there are essential fats. There's essential amino acids. There's no essential carbohydrates. When you're not sure, you know what to pick from. Pick from the 2 out of the 3 that I mentioned that are essential.
How much protein do we need?
Good question. How much protein we need is the question. It's a great question because everybody needs something different. So it depends on how well we absorb. So let's start with this. You may not need as much if your gut is absorbing everything. So really the number 2 property or feature that the gut is to absorb and digest nutrients. Now the gut communicates with your brain, and your brain signals and says, I'm full. That's called satiety. But it's not satiety of calories. It's satiety of nutrients. So take care of your gut. You probably won't need as much protein because you're absorbing at a higher rate. Different studies, different people. Men need a little bit more than women. And do you lift weights? Now, when I say lift weights, are you lifting barbells and all this kind of thing, kind of like bodybuilding and powerlifting? You're going to need a little bit more protein because you're tearing the muscle down. Are you doing body weight? You'll need a little less than them, but more than the average person. If you're only doing cardio, you still need protein, but you won't need quite as much. So there's no hard and fast rule. This is my personal opinion, what I would recommend to you. Probably 1 gram of protein per day for those who are active muscularly. So
1 gram of protein per day?
Yeah, if you're lifting heavy weights. Hold on. If you're doing more body weight, 3/4 to half. And if you're just walking a lot, about half your body weight in protein, in grams.
Half your,
half it. I got a little, I took her. So yesterday I lifted weights. I did deadlifts. And everybody who knows me, I have torticollis. So it was my day yesterday. It was my middle-aged day where nothing was wrong and I went in there and life was grand. You know, it's those 2 minutes in the fourth quarter that you go back. So I had to eat after that. I had to make sure I had some protein because I felt a little broken down. So the takeaway is, and again, feel free to give me a shout out.
Mike wants you to speak about the vagus nerve stimulation and satiety.
Sure. So the vagus nerve stimulation and satiety. Vagus nerve, cranial nerve, medulla oblongata at the bottom of the brainstem, down through the transverse colon. It's on the outside of the transverse colon. It's a 80 to 90% sensory organ. And the reason it's sensory is very simple, because it senses, because anatomically it's outside, it's sensing what's going on inside, has to send these sensory fibers to your brain. So that vagus nerve tone should be appropriate. If the tone is appropriate, your gut and your brain are communicating. It's the main bidirectional communicator between your gut and your brain, and your brain and your gut. So if your vagus nerve is doing so, you have a better chance, working the tone as well, you have a better chance of a feeling of satiety, which is nutrient fullness. It isn't just calorie fullness. Now that calorie fullness, every one of us, myself included, at one point ate a whole pizza pie. I might have done that for 35 years, but at some point we all did it. People do it in college. Some people still do it. And it takes to the whole pizza pie till you get full. And think what you're eating. You're eating a lot of carbs, you're eating a lot of dairy. I mean, there's nothing worse than that, sorry guys, that kind of pizza pie. You need to have the cauliflower, etc. pizza where you put your cashew cheese. It's delicious. If you were to compare and contrast that pizza pie of 2,500 calories with an avocado, who maybe is 500, you can feel really full with an avocado because it's full of nutrients and full of fat, good fat that speaks to your brain, and it's a gut promoting food, whereas you've got gluten and you've got dairy, and boy oh boy, your gut's going to shut down, and you're eventually going to have to go to the bathroom from it. So the point is, it's not calories is the takeaway here. The point is, it's the nutrient satiety and how the gut communicates with the brain. And Mike's question is great. The vagus nerve is a critical element between the gut and the brain, and the brain and the gut.
Cassie says like a symphony.
Cassie says like a symphony. Yes, and it's interesting. The orchestrator of the symphony, thank you, having one of those days, is your vagus nerve. But guess what keeps your vagus nerve in tone? 405 violet light that I use by Iconia. So if anybody has any questions on that, let me know. I'm happy to connect you. And what I do is I do the vagus nerve stimulation. You know what? I think I'm going to do a laser one for you guys and how laser comes into play. Real quick, a couple of demos. If anybody would like that, let me know. Just say L for laser, not L for loser, L for laser. And I'll do a couple of quick demos on myself. Maybe we'll get the camera woman from behind the camera and we'll do a couple of demos on her. And I'll show you how we can get that symphony going really well. And then once you get the tone well, there's foods and nutrient supplements that can handle and allow the tone to stay at its appropriate level. Good? I just asked you if you're good because I see you playing with the phone. Okay, great. So interesting. Some updates on the antibodies. More tests coming in. More interesting things. So here's something that's now really come out in reference to the antibodies. So somebody asked me today, what would I do first? And what's with the PCR test, antibodies, and everything? So here it is in a nutshell. You can be positive in the first 5 to 7 days of the PCR and have still not yet released any antibodies because you only have a fever. It has not got to the point where IgM needs to come in. So they call that the prodromal phase. So you can be positive on the PCR test, still negative on the antibody. Having said that, you can also be negative on the PCR because now you've got IgM initial and IgG. And you can have both or just IgG, but most prominently both, and still be negative. So here's some things that we have to know about this prodromal effect. It's approximately 14 days after abatement of fever, you will see a decrease in the respiratory symptomology. you will also see 28 days after the abatement of fever when all the virus will shed through the gut. So the antibody test is a great test because it's telling you where you are in the infection, if you've been infected, and if you've got the natural antibodies. So there's a lot of tests now. I start with the antibody, then I may suggest a PCR test that happens to be free, the PCR test. You can also, and I know companies are trying to get the poop test where they can test for the viruses, and I also added on Saturday some information on genetic disposition. If you guys are more interested, maybe we'll do a Facebook Live on genetic disposition towards respiratory dysfunction. So just a little update on the antibodies, and at the end, hopefully we'll have some questions that we can go over. One more thing that came up, this was in the New England Journal of Medicine. I have that right here. New England Journal of Medicine, neurological features in severe SARS-CoV-2 infection. It was April 17th, just over the weekend. Interesting in that they had 58 patients that were COVID-19 positive, and they also had ARDS. So they had acute respiratory distress syndrome. The median age was 65. The neurological functions on entrance was 8 out of 58 on admission. Later, 39 patients needed sedation and neuromuscular blockers. Those 39 patients, they withheld those. They wanted to see what would happen. Ultimately, without these neural blockers, people who had ARD, essentially 2/3 of them had a neurological problem. So we're beginning to realize that the brain may be adversely affected in people who have severe COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. It makes a lot of sense. Think about it. The body's all interconnected. We forget that so much. The gut to the brain is a direct axis. We know the virus can get in the gut. Also now we have gut to brain, we have gut to lung, lung to brain, brain to lung. So we've got these different pathways. The whole system, all these systems are communicating with each other. So it's not uncommon that we'll see some brain issues or some degeneration in those who are really more advanced. In addition, we all know about 1/3 of the people lose their sense of smell and lose their sense of taste. With that being stated, that shows there's a cranial nerve issue because smell and taste come from our cranial nerves. Therefore, our central nervous system also may be adversely affected. So a lot of people don't realize it's a whole system that's going on. You know, I jokingly say, you know, if we get it, let's get the IgG and let's move on with it. It may not be that easy, and it may not be so simplistic, because is there damage after? Is there not? So looking at the numbers as we get towards the end, and I'll answer any questions that you guys have and shout outs, it looks like the curve is dropping. The more that we physical social distance works well. And unfortunately, you know, as you guys all know, I'm in a hotbed in New York. The curve is going a little like this, which is what they want. Still, we're getting a lot of people there. I can't tell you. There's multiple people I knew that have perished. I'm not trying to fearmonger. And some of the other states are starting to get it. It's clear to me that we have to be careful. We have to take care of ourselves. The opportunity to take care of if we have any comorbidities, the biggest thing that we need to do right now is change our lifestyle. So let's review. Lifestyle's key. Health is your priority. How do you do that? Eat good quality foods. Try an intermittent fast, time restrictive eat within a 10-hour period. Keep saying that. Get some exercise every day. Eat from the cherry tree. Eat your fruits and vegetables. Eat your clean foods. Don't fry anything, no dairy, no nicotine, no processed food, no artificial sweeteners. As we all know, no sugar, no starch. We kind of covered that. That's great. We talked about the exercise, get good quality sleep. Best way to sleep is on your left side. Left side is the best, left sideline, best side. That's because that gives your body and your brain its best ability to detox. Your brain detoxes at night. All your systems heal at night. In addition, good quality supplements. Let's go through a few. You know, we haven't talked about it enough, but
you have a shout out from Ross Rakowski.
Ross Rakowski, how are you? Big shout out. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Everybody, make sure you share this. This is information that everybody needs. Feel free to share it and tell them to like my Facebook so they can check in and come in.
I have a question.
Sure.
What are the long-term consequences of the body once you've been infected?
You know, that's a great, what are the long-term consequences once the body's been affected? Right now, they don't know because it's still early. Having said that, interestingly enough, there's been some instances in fibrosis, and I think that's the fear. I think we have this initial fear, and it's still there, that do we get it? How bad do we get it? If we have these comorbidities, my mom's almost 91, that's age is a comorbidity, we don't want her to have it. We have that fear, but the question is, what happens to those who have it? We're just not sure. No one's really done enough studies. Right now, we're still in this stage. I think this stage will say, hey, here's been the side effects from it. So the supplements I recommend, and if anybody needs any, we'll put a link where you can get them. Not a problem. You know, we're going to reach out to all our patients. We remind them weekly, anything they need. Good quality multivitamin, good quality omega-3 fish oil, good quality vitamin D3. Take a probiotic without question. You got your Bacillus subtilis, your Lactobacillus acidophilus, your B. lactis. Those are great. L. raminosus, L. reuteri, Bifidobacterium longum, etc. There's a plethora of things that you can look at. In addition to that, to help your immune system, one of the things that we mentioned before was without question D3. Right now, I said it, you can get it in green tea or take it as a supplement, e.g. CG. I think zinc is a great choice. Quercetin because it's high flavonoid. PEA has been overlooked, but it's great. Melatonin, if you're afraid of a cytokine storm, you want to decrease inflammation, also get better sleep. Melatonin is overlooked. It also helps quench down the release of LPS in your gut. LPS is an endotoxin, very damaging to overall structural health, raises inflammation. And, you know, if I had to pull one more, when I really think about it, it would, believe it or not, would be, of course, turmeric. So these are basics. These are 6 or 8 basics. Get a good fruit and greens drink every day. Watch your sugar and starch. And do we have any other shout outs before I... So let me know, before we end, let me know if you want to see a laser. If you do, put L for laser, not L for loser, as we said before. I'm really happy to do that. I'll announce it also. We're also going to talk later in the week about some genetic markers and predispositions to possibly respiratory problems, inflammation, and hypertension. And we're always here to answer your questions. You know, we're here every day, 1 to 3. I'm sorry, let me try that again. We're here from about 1 to 1:30. Every day we're consistent in the 1 o'clock. We just happen to be a little late. 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Monday to Friday. You guys also, we have an Instagram, that's Dr. Robert Silverman, YouTube also, LinkedIn. Any questions? We're here. It's always my pleasure. We'll see you tomorrow. Dr. Rob, always yours in health.